We use the 70-20-10 learning model. So 70% on the job experience, 20% coaching and mentoring, and then 10% of formal training.
How you define and identify those high potential employees across different functions in your business.
We aim to fill our technician roles within 48 days, but that doesn't mean we compromise on quality.
Especially in manufacturing, in some of those more highly repetitive roles as well. That's an increase in burnout, right? Hi, and welcome to today's conversation with Talent Talk. I'm excited to bring to light a conversation with Matt Stauffer, who is the Director of Global Talent Acquisition for Crane Payment Innovations. Matt, would you like to do a little intro?
Oh, it'd be my pleasure. So I've been with Crane Payment Innovations for about 7 years, going on 8. And as you mentioned, lead global talent acquisition. Have about 15 years, a little over 15 years of experience recruiting, which has spanned in-house recruiting, agency, professional services, and even consulting for high growth tech startups as well. Started with CPI as a talent acquisition manager, being a sole resource, and now have a team of 3 reporting to me that's responsible for global talent acquisition.
A little bit of everything, right?
Talent
acquisition looks different in all of those spaces, no doubt.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for this conversation. We had talked a lot previously about upskilling, reskilling, your workforce, how you're thinking about it, what strategy goes into that. And we're going to dive into some of those topics today, which I'm super excited about. One of the things that really piqued my interest in the work that you do is you do a nice job of identifying high potential employees. So I'd love to hear about how you define and identify those high potential employees across different functions in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So at CPI, we look for associates who show the ability, aspiration, and agility to grow. And this is typically two levels beyond their current role within about a 3 to 4 year time span. And so these individuals who we're evaluating are going to be folks who consistently deliver results. They take that initiative, they influence others, and they serve as a role model for the business. And so I think what's exciting about this is that their growth doesn't have to be linear either as well. They can stay within their current functions, or they can actually explore other opportunities across different areas of Crane Payment Innovations, as well as our sister companies that are part of the overall Crane NXT portfolio. And I can get into how do we look at, ability, aspiration, and agility, right? So, the way we break it down is, the ability. So consistently performing at a high level, right? They create value and they have the drive to expand their impact. They're also very, very good or even great at building relationships and influencing others. On the aspiration side, these are individuals that live our values. They have strong self-awareness and are motivated to take on more responsibility as well. So they're looking for that growth themselves. And then the agility piece of it, right, is they learn quickly, they adapt to change, thrive in complex environments. So it's constantly changing in our environment. So anybody that moves and can pivot with that quickly is someone that we have high value for. And so I think this versatile skill set allows them to apply kind of what they learn and turn it into results.
Do you find that framework works well for people with leadership aspirations as well as individual contributor tracks, or is it more geared towards kind of leadership in those types of positions?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's aligned more to we're looking at the leadership standpoint, and I think for those are the conversations we have a lot about. But if we look at different functions within our business, I'll give engineering, for example, is as our engineers develop through our our program or through their career path, they kind of get to a point of kind of a fork where you say, do I want to be a technical master and go that principal engineer route? Or do I want to get into people management? And that's another whole development program. So
different skill sets for sure, right?
exactly. So, and that, hey, we understand there's not everybody that's going to want to be a people leader. We have engineers here that love what they do, and it's obvious that's what they're passionate about. And so, yeah, we want to keep them going on what's going to make them happy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you need all of them to work, right? Different avenues for all of those high performers. I love that. So let's say you have identified one of these kind of high performing, high potential employees. Tell me a little bit about the strategies or programs that you have in place to nurture that growth and development for those employees.
Absolutely. So we take I would say, a very intentional approach to developing our high potential talent. Managers are the direct managers will work closely with our HR business leaders to really create a personalized development plan. We use the 70-20-10 model, learning model. So 70% on the job experience, 20% coaching and mentoring, and then 10% of formal training. All right. We also make sure our high potentials and really all of our associates have visibility into their career paths and access to meaningful projects that stretch their capabilities. Right. So on top of all that, we are building our own. We have been in development. We're building our own leadership development program in-house, which is very exciting. And this will complement some of our external offerings. Like we utilize the Dale Carnegie training program, as well as we're also developing out a new mentorship program for our high potentials looking to get into leadership as well. So in the end, it's really all about giving our people the tools and opportunities to grow.
Yeah. And the space, right? To even have some of those meaningful conversations and to kind of understand what opportunities
Absolutely.
are available to them. I think so often people don't know what the next step could be, right? So to create thoughtful space around that, I think is really important. I love that. Um, we had talked in our last conversation a little bit about kind of technology, right? And how rapidly it is evolving. And I'm really curious, you kind of mentioned some of the training programs you're working on as it relates to leadership and development. I am curious, what other programs or innovations are you doing in reskilling or cross skilling your workforce to kind of be future ready?
It's a great question. And it's actually something we're actively focused on, really from both to stay competitive and to retain top talent. One example I can give you is from our convenience services business unit, where we use a strategy called flow to the work. And this allows us to tap into our global workforce and match skills with the project needs. And it could be whether it's product development or navigating regulatory requirements. So we have so much experience and so much knowledge in the business, we can pivot individuals into different projects depending on, as bandwidth allows. And then I would say more on call it on a local level. So I think of our manufacturing sites. And so say on the shop floor. So we're able to also shift skilled assemblers between product lines as needed. So it, not only helps us stay agile in response to market changes, but also give our associates exposure to new techniques, new processes that they can in turn bring back to their teams once that project's over. So it's really kind of a win-win for development and operational flexibility.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think especially in manufacturing, in some of those more highly repetitive roles as well, that's an increase in burnout, right? If they're doing the exact same work for an extended period of time every single day, right? There is a lifespan on that. And so I think the more you can expose them to different ways of work, it also probably enhances how they show up and do that, button pushing or whatever it is that they need to do every single day, bringing different perspective to it, right? And I think that's really powerful.
So for example, for like our convenience service business unit, we have two two products that we do, beverage dispensing and vending, and they're two very different manufacturing processes. So to be able to take that and carry over what one team's doing in another, I think it's going to help everybody in the end. So
yeah, that diversity of thought, right? That innovation that's going to happen. I think that's fantastic. Um, Speaking of vending services, I know a lot of your workforce is service technicians and field technicians in that way. They're often hired in very large volumes, at least the kind of service technician workforces that I'm familiar with. So I'm curious for Crane, what are some of the key challenges you face in scaling the hiring process for service technicians efficiently?
another great question. So I think there's a few hurdles we have to navigate here. First, I think for more technical or more specialized technical positions is the talent supply can be tricky. Really, especially in those regions where maybe they're not near a major city, right? So sometimes the candidate pool is limited, depending on how remote the position is, or and the more we found in some popular areas, so more populated like Boston or Seattle, where the commute is just too far to get across every day. For most people aren't interested in doing that commute. So we have, that's one of the things we have to factor in when we look at, work in these locations. And we have a little bit of flexibility depending on, we try to centralize our kind of our base territory, since our technicians are remote, to kind of centralize to the total area that they are going to support, right? And so I think talents, with talent supply, there is one of the strategies that we've implemented is we partnerships with some of the national technical schools, such as like a Lincoln Tech, so these programs allow us access to pre-qualified talent pools and kind of helps us streamline our sourcing a little bit. I think some of the other ones we run in, I think one of the hurdles we deal with is brand awareness, right? So as a B2B company, CPI isn't always top of mind with candidates. Or we're not out there like on the consumer side and constantly in front of you. But listen, that's okay, because I think that's where the fun comes in. We get to tell our story and connect the dots between our products and the everyday experiences people are having with them. So that's one of the things I love about telling our story, is that I get to see a lot of times, I get to see that aha moment when candidates realize how often they interact with our tech on a daily basis, which is really cool.
That's so cool.
And I think the only other, not the only other, but I think with some of the other, hurdles that we deal with is, I think it comes down to where a lot of organizations deal with is the, speed versus quality dilemma. We aim to fill our technician roles within 48 days, but that doesn't mean we compromise on quality, right? So to help us with the sourcing and getting, good people in as quickly as possible, we lean heavily on our employee referral program, which I have to say is, I think it's above market. It's very lucrative. So finding technicians is very important to us. So, we want to make sure they're taken care of that way. We also build talent pipelines in challenging regions. So places where we know talent supply is maybe a little bit limited, we have longer time to fills. So we're constantly building those future talent pipelines. And then I think too, we also keep track of, really, these strong candidates who maybe haven't been selected for the first time around, for any particular reason. So they're kind of, some places call them silver medal or bronze medal candidates. So very strong candidates. It's just at that time, it wasn't the right fit. But we have folks where we bring them back into the process and have a lot of success with them.
Amazing what really helpful feedback can do for a candidate, right? They may not be aware of those different gaps they might have, but if they're the right candidate, they'll work on it if they want to be, successful with the organization. So I think that's, what do they say? Clear is, no, what's the phrase? I'm forgetting now, but Clear as kind, I think it is.
There's time. Okay, I never heard of it. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. I love that. It sounds like you're doing a ton to stimulate early talent as well. I imagine there's some high school pipelines or things like that, programs that you guys are doing there. How early are you getting with those talent programs?
So our talent programs right now are limited to. I would say we have a defined internship program that we're working with undergrad, even in graduate programs as well. So we haven't explored too far into the almost to a high school standpoint. I think that's where these partnerships, like with the technical schools like Lincoln Tech, I think are going to be so helpful, in that we're still getting that early career individuals, but they have that kind of foundational skill set that we can train and develop into future leaders in our business too.
That's great. Fantastic. Speaking of that technician level or even technical roles that require very specific hands on experience, I'm very curious, do you guys leverage any assessments or like hiring frameworks that you use to ensure consistency in candidate quality? I know you mentioned speed to hire is really important, but of course, never compromising on that candidate quality.
Right. Right. So I think, when it comes to hiring technicians, is, that these individuals obviously require a lot of hands-on experience. So that consistency, right, that you just mentioned is in candidate is critical. But not, and I would say not just from a operational standpoint, performance standpoint, but also safety, customer satisfaction, and even kind of looking at long-term retention of them. So to help with this consistency, we kind of rely on a kind of multi-layer assessment framework that kind of blends structured evaluation into real world simulation, right? So we have a structured interview where everybody goes through the same standardized behavioral and technical interview process. And we're actually, to help with this even further, I'm currently in the process of developing out implementing scorecards to help align interviewing with our core competencies like troubleshooting, safety awareness, customer retention. Again, to really help reduce that bias and ensure consistency across all of our locations. We do, part of our interview framework is we do issue 3 separate skill assessments. They are based on electrical competencies, mechanical competencies, and then finally computer competencies. And computer is more about the understanding the hardware and operating systems knowledge versus, say, like a Windows suite and understanding how to do Word and things like that. So these assessments, really what they're designed for, it's not used in a deciding factor in the hiring process, but it's more to help hiring managers and our HR teams to kind of establish a baseline knowledge and potential areas of development should we decide to move forward with this candidate. So it provides training opportunities and areas we need to work on them. And then when possible, sometimes travel makes it a little bit more difficult, is there are times where from a technical standpoint, we'll get into the practical job piece of it. And so our manager will provide a machine. They can actually see, touch, look and ask them to maybe diagnose a mock equipment failure or complete a timed repair task. And really the goal behind this is these simulations give us really a direct view of how the candidates perform under pressure, their logic how they approach troubleshooting, and then how do they apply that knowledge in real time.
Sure. Okay, great.
And of course, in the end, in the spirit of continuous improvement, we conduct quality audits, right? So we look to make sure our tools and processes enable us to continue to maintain that high level of candidate quality.
That's great. Well, I know some of those mechanical tests can be very intimidating. Some of those machines and setups can be intimidating, but I think I like your approach to it where it's more, how are you thinking about this versus are you following the exact standard operating procedure as written, right? And I think good, right, or indifferent, there's lots of different ways that companies interpret that kind of data and they leverage that data as a go or no go in the decision making process. But I think to your point, you know, you get a little bit further beneath the surface with these candidates to see how do you best support them if they do become a full-time employee, right? What other kind of training pieces might need to be implemented to make sure that they have that long-term success.
Absolutely.
Well, Matt, thank you so very much for the conversation. Lots of really great insights into the work that you and the team are doing over at Crane Payment Innovations. If anyone would like to get in touch with you to learn a little bit more about you or the work that your team is doing, can they reach out to you on LinkedIn?
100%. Always happy to network and talk with folks in our industry and my line of work. So always good to do some knowledge exchange. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. And just because now I need to know the answer, what is the one piece of machinery that people have that aha moment with when they're interacting with Crane and they didn't know it?
So that's a good one. So I would say to make it easier I'll work with the national level. So if anyone has used paid cash at a self-checkout kiosk in, say, a Walmart, a Target, a Home Depot, the bill acceptors, the coin acceptors, the change dispensers, those are CPI products.
I'm pretty sure I used that twice yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think a lot of our products are embedded into these larger kiosk solutions. So a lot of times you're not going to see the kind of the logos or branding on it. So that's when you may not even realize it's a CPI product, but we're there. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thanks again, Matt. And we will see you next time on our next episode of Talent Talk.
Wonderful. Thank you, Becca.